Before we begin, if you enjoy emotional Afro-Korean stories filled with shocking twists, betrayal, and satisfying endings, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. When a little boy called him Dad, the Korean Mafia boss couldn't walk away. A black SUV screeched to a stop in the middle of the street. The door flew open. Hyun-Woo stepped out before the vehicle had fully stopped moving. Rain hammered against the pavement. 3 armed men stood frozen near a warehouse entrance. One of them tightened his grip on a pistol. Hyun-Woo's eyes darkened. "Where is the boy?" Nobody answered. His jaw clenched. "I'll ask one more time." The men exchanged nervous glances. "Where is Malik?" A trembling voice finally spoke. We don't know." Hyun-Woo took a step forward. The men instinctively stepped back. Every criminal in Seoul knew who he was. Hyun-Woo wasn't just wealthy. He wasn't just powerful. He was the most feared mafia boss in Korea. And right now, he looked ready to burn the entire city down. "If anything happens to him," he said quietly, "none of you will survive." 3 months earlier, Leila El Mansouri rushed through the crowded streets of Seoul while checking her phone. She was already late. Again. Her manager had called 3 times. Her landlord had sent another warning message. And now Malik's teacher wanted to see her immediately. Leila sighed. Some days felt impossible. At 29 years old, she was raising her son alone in a country that still felt foreign despite living there for years. She worked 2 jobs. Sometimes 3. Yet somehow there was never enough money. Her phone rang again. She answered. "Hello. Ms. El Mansouri," the teacher said. "Can you come to the school right away?" Leila's stomach tightened. "What happened?" "It's Malik." She immediately stopped walking. "What did he do?" The teacher hesitated. "He got into a fight." Leila closed her eyes. "Oh no. You need to come. I'll be there." She hung up and hurried toward the school. Meanwhile, across the city, another meeting was taking place. A much more dangerous one. Several men sat around a large table. Nobody spoke. Nobody dared. At the head of the table sat Hyun-Woo. One man nervously swallowed. "The shipment arrived safely." Hyun-Woo nodded. Another man spoke. "Our rivals have been asking questions." Hyun-Woo's gaze lifted. The room immediately grew tense. "What kind of questions?" The man shifted uncomfortably. "They've been trying to track your movements." Silence. Dangerous silence. Hyun-Woo leaned back. "Then find out who's talking." The room fell completely quiet. Everyone knew what happened to traitors. Hyun-Woo stood. The meeting instantly ended. No one stopped him. No one questioned him. When he walked away, people moved aside. Fear followed him everywhere. But when he entered his private office, the expression on his face changed. Not much. Just enough. His eyes landed on a framed photograph. A picture from years ago. His mother. The only person who had ever loved him unconditionally. She was gone. Had been for a long time. Since then, his life had become nothing but power, violence, and loneliness. His phone buzzed. A security report. Another threat. Another enemy. Another problem. He sighed. For a man who controlled half of Seoul's underworld, he had never felt more alone. At the school, Leila arrived breathless. She found Malik sitting outside the principal's office. The little boy looked guilty. Very guilty. "Malik." His head dropped immediately. "Hi, Mom." Leila crossed her arms. "What happened?" Malik avoided eye contact. The principal opened the door. "Please come inside." A few minutes later, Leila finally understood. Another student had mocked Malik. The boy had laughed at him for not having a father. Malik had punched him. Leila stared at her son. "You hit him?" Malik's eyes filled with tears. "He said dads don't want me." Leila's heart shattered. The principal looked uncomfortable. The teacher looked uncomfortable. Even Malik looked heartbroken. Leila knelt in front of him. "Malik." The boy sniffled. "What?" "You should never hit people." "He said my dad left because he didn't love me." Leila couldn't answer immediately, because she knew exactly how much those words hurt. Malik lowered his head. "Maybe it's true." Leila quickly pulled him into a hug. "No. But he never came." Tears filled her eyes. "No, sweetheart." "Then where is he?" Leila didn't know what to say. She had spent years trying to protect him from that question. Now it was finally here. And she had no answer. As they left the school later that afternoon, Malik remained unusually quiet. They stopped at a crosswalk. Cars rushed past. People hurried home. Then Malik suddenly pointed. Mom. What is it? Look. Across the street stood a tall man in a black suit. Several bodyguards surrounded him. The man looked calm, powerful, unapproachable, even from a distance. Malik stared curiously. He's cool. Leila laughed softly. Don't point. But Malik couldn't stop looking. Neither could fate. Because that man was Hyun-Woo. And in less than 24 hours, their lives would become connected forever. The next morning started badly. Leila overslept. Malik couldn't find a school bag. The bus left without them. Everything that could go wrong seemed determined to go wrong. By the time they reached school, they were late. Again. Leila grabbed Malik's hand. Run. They hurried through the gate. At the same moment, a black luxury sedan pulled into the parking area. Several bodyguards stepped out first. Then came Hyun-Woo. He had arrived for an entirely unrelated meeting with a business sponsor connected to the school. Leila wasn't paying attention. Neither was Malik. The little boy suddenly slipped from her grasp. Malik. He ran ahead, straight toward Hyun-Woo. Leila's eyes widened. The bodyguards immediately moved. One reached for the child. But before anyone could stop him, Malik looked up at the intimidating stranger. Then he smiled. A huge, innocent smile. One that completely caught everyone off guard. And with the pure excitement only a child could have, he shouted, Dad. The entire parking lot froze. The entire parking lot froze. Leila stopped breathing. The bodyguards looked horrified. Several parents turned around. Even Hyun-Woo's expression changed for the briefest moment. Malik ran the remaining distance and wrapped his small arms around Hyun-Woo's leg. Dad. Leila nearly dropped her bag. Malik. The little boy looked up happily. I found him. Hyun-Woo stared down at the child. Nobody had ever hugged him like that. Not in years. Not without fear. Not without wanting something. One of the bodyguards stepped forward. Sir, should we? Hyun-Woo raised a hand. The bodyguard immediately stopped talking. Leila rushed over. I'm so sorry. She grabbed Malik's shoulders. Let go. Malik frowned. But Mom. He's not your father. The little boy looked confused. His eyes moved between them. Then back to Hyun-Woo. For some reason, he seemed unconvinced. The surrounding parents had already started whispering. Hyun-Woo noticed. So did Leila. Unfortunately, one of Malik's classmates happened to be standing nearby. The same boy from yesterday. The boy immediately laughed. That's not your dad. Malik's face fell. The smile vanished. Leila felt her heart sink. The child looked devastated. Then something unexpected happened. Hyun-Woo spoke. Who said that? The playground instantly became quiet. The other boy froze. Even his mother looked nervous. Hyun-Woo's voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. I asked who said that. The boy slowly raised his hand. Hyun-Woo stared at him for several seconds. Then he crouched slightly so he could look directly at Malik. What happened? Malik hesitated. He said nobody wanted me. The little boy tried to be brave. But his voice cracked. He said my dad didn't love me. Something cold flashed across Hyun-Woo's eyes. Leila noticed immediately. The nearby parents noticed too. The atmosphere suddenly felt dangerous. Hyun-Woo slowly stood. His gaze shifted toward the other child. You shouldn't say things like that. The boy quickly lowered his head. Hyun-Woo then surprised everyone again, including himself. He placed a hand on Malik's shoulder. The little boy immediately brightened. And before anyone could predict what came next, Hyun-Woo said, Let's go inside. Leila blinked. What? The meeting. There is no meeting. There is now. Leila stared at him. The bodyguard stared at him. Everyone stared at him. But Hyun-Woo was already walking toward the school building. Malik hurried after him. Wait for me, Dad. Leila nearly fainted. Inside the school office, confusion spread like wildfire. Teachers whispered. Staff members exchanged looks. The principal looked completely lost. Hyun-Woo sat calmly across from him. Leila sat beside Malik, still trying to understand what was happening. The principal cleared his throat. So? Nobody answered. The principal tried again. Mr. Cha. Mr. Cha. The principal forced a smile. It's wonderful that Malik's father could attend today. Leila opened her mouth. Hyun-Woo interrupted. Thank you. She immediately looked at him. Was he actually doing this? Was he pretending? Why? The principal continued. Malik is a wonderful child. Hyun-Woo nodded. I know. Leila almost choked. Malik looked happier than she had seen him in months. The meeting lasted 20 minutes. 20 very confusing minutes. Every time someone referred to Hyun-Woo as Malik's father, he never corrected them. Not once. When they finally left the office, Leila grabbed his arm. Wait. His bodyguards immediately tensed. Hyun-Woo looked at her calmly. What? What exactly are you doing? Malik stood nearby, humming happily. Hyun-Woo glanced at the boy, then back at Leila. I solved a problem. You created 10 more. The corner of his mouth almost moved. Almost. You seem dramatic. Leila stared at him. You're a stranger. Correct. My son thinks you're his father. Also correct. Why would you encourage that? For the first time, Hyun-Woo didn't answer immediately. His eyes briefly moved toward Malik. The little boy was smiling. Actually smiling. Then Hyun-Woo spoke quietly. Because he looked like he needed one. Leila froze. The answer caught her completely off guard. Before she could respond, one of his bodyguards approached. Sir. Hyun-Woo nodded. The conversation was over. Within seconds he was walking away. Leila watched him leave. She shouldn't have felt grateful. But somehow she did. That evening, Malik couldn't stop talking. Did you see him? Leila sighed. Yes. He's awesome. Malik. What? He's not your father. The little boy became quiet. For a few seconds. Then he spoke softly. I know. Leila blinked. You do? Yeah. The answer surprised her. Malik poked at his food. But for a minute. His voice became smaller. It felt nice. Leila looked away. Because suddenly her eyes were burning. The next few days passed peacefully. At least at first. Then chaos returned. One afternoon, Leila received an unexpected call. The school. Again. Her stomach dropped immediately. Hello? Ms. El Mansouri? Yes. There seems to be a problem. Her heart sank. What happened? It's Malik. 30 minutes later, she rushed to the school. When she arrived, she found Malik sitting outside the nurse's office. A bruise had formed beneath one eye. Leila's blood ran cold. She knelt beside him. Who did this? Malik looked down. The same boy. Again. This time the fight had been worse. Much worse. Leila was furious. Absolutely furious. But before she could say anything, another voice appeared behind her. What happened? Everyone turned. Her eyes widened. Cha Hyun-Woo. The principal immediately stood. The teachers straightened. Even the security guard looked nervous. Leila stared. What are you doing here? Hyun-Woo ignored the question. His gaze focused entirely on Malik's bruise. The little boy smiled. Dad. Leila closed her eyes. Not again. Hyun-Woo crouched beside him. Does it hurt? A little. Who hit you? Malik pointed. The other child stood nearby with his parents. The father immediately stepped forward. Kids fight. Hyun-Woo slowly stood. The man instantly regretted speaking. The difference in presence between them was overwhelming. The father took an unconscious step backward. Hyun-Woo's voice remained calm. Kids fight. The man nodded quickly. Exactly. Hyun-Woo looked at Malik. Then back at the man. So if someone hits your son, that's acceptable? The man froze. No. Interesting. The father suddenly had nothing else to say. Neither did anyone else. A heavy silence settled across the hallway. Then Hyun-Woo did something nobody expected. He extended his hand toward Malik. Come. Malik immediately took it. The smile on the child's face nearly broke Leila's heart. Because for the first time in years, someone was standing up for him. Someone was protecting him. And Malik loved every second of it. As they walked away together, Leila couldn't shake the feeling that something dangerous was happening. Not because Hyun-Woo was a stranger. Not because he was powerful. But because her son was becoming attached. And deep down, she was starting to see it too. The way Hyun-Woo looked at Malik. The way Malik looked at him. The bond was forming. And neither of them seemed capable of stopping it. What Leila didn't know was that at the very same moment, several men were sitting inside a dark room on the other side of Seoul. Photos were spread across a table. Photos of Cha Hyun-Woo. Photos of his bodyguards. Photos of his daily routines. Then one man placed another photograph on top. A picture of Leila. And Malik. The room became silent. One of the men smiled. So that's his weakness. And suddenly, the game became much more dangerous. So that's his weakness. The man tapped Malik's photograph with a finger. The others leaned forward. For years, Hyun-Woo had been impossible to attack. He trusted nobody, loved nobody, needed nobody. That was why he had survived. But now? The photograph suggested otherwise. The leader of the rival group smiled. Keep watching them. Back at the school, Leila couldn't stop thinking about what was happening. Nothing about this situation made sense. Hyun-Woo was a complete stranger. Yet somehow he kept appearing whenever Malik needed him. And the worst part? Malik was happier than ever. A week later, the school held a sports festival. Parents and children filled the field. Laughter echoed everywhere. Leila sat beside Malik on a bench. The little boy looked excited. Then his smile slowly faded. Leila immediately noticed. What's wrong? Malik pointed toward another family. A father was helping his son prepare for a race. The child was laughing. The father was cheering. Leila's heart tightened. Before she could say anything, Malik forced a smile. It's okay. That made it worse. Children weren't supposed to pretend they were okay. They were supposed to be honest. Leila squeezed his shoulder. Then her phone vibrated. An unknown number. She frowned. Hello? You're at the school? Her eyes widened. The voice was familiar. Hyun-Woo. How did you get this number? You gave it to the school. That's not what I asked. For the first time, she heard amusement in his voice. A tiny amount. Look behind you. Leila turned and nearly dropped her phone. A black luxury SUV had just arrived. Several parents immediately started whispering. Bodyguards stepped aside. Then Hyun-Woo appeared. Malik jumped to his feet. Dad. Half the school heard him. The other half probably heard him too. Hyun-Woo walked over calmly. For some reason, he was carrying a football. Malik's eyes lit up. Is that for me? Maybe. The little boy immediately hugged him. Leila watched in disbelief. The man who terrified criminals across Korea was standing in a schoolyard holding a football, while a 6-year-old hugged him. Nobody would believe it. Not even she did. A few minutes later, the three-legged race began. Parents were required to participate. Unfortunately, Malik didn't have a partner. Or at least he shouldn't have. The teacher looked apologetic. I'm sorry. Before Leila could respond, Hyun-Woo stepped forward. I'll do it. Everyone looked at him, including Leila. What? I'll do it. Malik looked like he had won the lottery. 10 minutes later, Hyun-Woo found himself standing at a starting line with one leg tied to Malik's. He had negotiated weapons deals, built a criminal empire, survived assassination attempts. Yet somehow this felt more stressful. Malik laughed. Don't lose. Hyun-Woo looked down. I don't lose. The whistle blew. The race started. They immediately stumbled. Malik burst into laughter. For the first time in years, Hyun-Woo laughed too. A real laugh. Not a polite smile. Not a fake reaction. An actual laugh. Leila saw it. And for a moment she forgot who he was. All she saw was a man and a child enjoying themselves. The race ended. They didn't win. Malik didn't care. The little boy was smiling from ear to ear. This was the best day ever. Something shifted inside Hyun-Woo. Something dangerous. Because he liked hearing that. Far more than he should have. That evening, while driving home, Malik wouldn't stop talking. He ran really fast. Leila smiled. He fell twice. But he still tried. He definitely tried. Malik leaned against the window. Then he spoke quietly. I wish he could stay forever. The smile disappeared from Leila's face. She glanced at her son. The little boy was staring outside. Dreaming. Hoping. Leila looked away. Because she didn't know how to tell him that life rarely gave people what they wanted. The next morning, Hyun-Woo arrived at his headquarters. The atmosphere immediately changed. Men straightened. Employees lowered their eyes. Fear followed him as usual. But one of his senior associates noticed something. Boss. Hyun-Woo looked up. You seem different. Hyun-Woo continued walking. I'm not. The man exchanged a look with another associate. He definitely was. Later that afternoon, Hyun-Woo sat alone in his office. A small object rested on his desk. A drawing. Malik had given it to him after the sports festival. 3 stick figures. One labeled Malik. One labeled Mom. And one labeled Dad. Hyun-Woo stared at it. For several seconds. Then several minutes. He should have thrown it away. Instead, he placed it inside a drawer. Somewhere safe. His phone suddenly rang. The screen displayed a familiar name. Leila. He answered. What happened? There was a pause. Why do you assume something happened? Because you're calling me. She sighed. Fair point. For some reason, that made him smile. A little. I wanted to thank you. Silence. Then. For what? The sports festival. Another pause. You don't need to thank me. Maybe not. Then don't. Leila laughed unexpectedly. The sound surprised both of them. For a second, neither spoke. Then she cleared her throat. Malik had a great time. Hyun-Woo looked at the drawing in his drawer. So did I. The line went quiet. Neither knew what to say next. Eventually, the call ended. But something had changed. The distance between them fell smaller. And that terrified Leila. A few days later, Malik's school finished early. Leila was delayed at work. Panic immediately set in. She couldn't leave. Her manager refused. She checked the time again. Malik would be waiting alone. Then an idea appeared. One she hated. Absolutely hated. But she made the call anyway. Hyun-Woo answered on the first ring. What is it? She took a deep breath. I need a favor. 40 minutes later, Malik sat outside the school gate. Most of the children had already left. The little boy tried not to look worried. Then a black luxury sedan stopped nearby. The door opened. Malik's eyes widened. Dad. He sprinted across the sidewalk. Hyun-Woo barely had time to react before the child launched himself into a hug. Several nearby mothers watched with envy. One whispered, That's definitely his father. Another nodded. Look at how much he loves him. Neither knew the truth. And honestly, neither did Malik anymore. On the drive home, the little boy talked nonstop. Hyun-Woo listened. Mostly. Then Malik suddenly asked, Can I ask you something? Yes. Why don't you have kids? The question hit harder than expected. Hyun-Woo kept his eyes on the road. I never had time. Malik thought about that. Then he frowned. That's sad. Hyun-Woo almost laughed. Is it? Yeah. Why? Because you're a good dad. The car became completely silent. Hyun-Woo gripped the steering wheel. Hard. Because nobody had ever called him that before. Nobody. Not once in his entire life. And somehow, the opinion that mattered most belonged to a 6-year-old boy. That night, Hyun-Woo couldn't sleep. He kept hearing those words. You're a good dad. For a man whose reputation was built on fear. Why did that mean so much? Across the city, Leila was having her own struggle. She stood in Malik's bedroom doorway. Watching him sleep, the child looked peaceful, happy, safer. For the first time in years. And she knew why. It was because of Hyun-Woo. That realization frightened her. Because people like Hyun-Woo didn't stay forever. Sooner or later, they always left. And when that happened, Malik's heart would break all over again. Unfortunately, fate had other plans. Because outside their apartment building, a black vehicle sat parked in the darkness. 2 men inside watched the entrance. One raised a camera. Click. Another photograph. Another report. The passenger lowered his binoculars. Should we tell the boss? The driver nodded. Yes. He looked toward Malik's apartment. Then smiled coldly. They're getting closer. And somewhere deep inside Seoul's criminal underworld, a trap was beginning to close. A trap was beginning to close. Leila had no idea. The next few days felt surprisingly normal. Almost too normal. Hyun-Woo picked Malik up from school twice. He helped him with homework. He attended a parent reading session. By now, most of the teachers simply assumed he was Malik's father. Nobody questioned it anymore. The lie had become part of everyday life. And somehow, that made it even more dangerous. One afternoon, Malik sat at the kitchen table struggling with a school project. Leila was preparing dinner when her phone rang. Malik immediately looked up. Is it Dad? Leila nearly dropped the spoon. Malik. What? Stop calling him that. The little boy grinned. You call him Hyun-Woo. That's because it's his name. And Dad is his title. Leila stared at him. Malik returned to coloring. As if he had just said something completely normal. The phone continued ringing. Leila answered. What is it? You're becoming predictable. She rolled her eyes. Hello to you too. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Hyun-Woo said, How was Malik's day? The question caught her off guard. Not because he asked. Because he genuinely cared. He got an A on his science test. A pause. Then, good. Leila smiled despite herself. You sound proud. I am. The answer came so quickly that neither of them knew what to do with it. A strange silence followed. Not uncomfortable, just unfamiliar. Then Malik shouted from across the room. Tell Dad I got 98%. Hyun-Woo heard him. Leila knew because she heard the faint laugh on the other end. The sound made her heart do something she didn't appreciate. Something dangerous. The call ended shortly afterward. But his voice remained in her mind. Unfortunately, reality was waiting. 3 days later, everything changed. Leila was leaving work when she noticed two men standing across the street, watching her. The moment she looked directly at them, they turned away. Her stomach tightened. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe she was imagining things. Still, the feeling stayed with her. That evening she arrived home. Malik was already there. So was Hyun-Woo. The two were sitting on the floor playing a football game. Leila stopped at the doorway. The scene looked absurd. Completely absurd. The feared Mafia boss of Seoul was arguing with a 6-year-old. That goal doesn't count. It does. It doesn't. It does. You cheated. Malik gasped dramatically. I would never. Hyun-Woo raised an eyebrow. You absolutely would. The little boy burst into laughter. Leila couldn't stop smiling. For one brief moment. It looked like a real family. Then the moment ended. Because a black SUV suddenly stopped outside the apartment building. Hyun-Woo noticed immediately. His smile vanished. So fast that Leila almost missed it. Almost. He stood. What is it? Hyun-Woo walked toward the window. Nothing about his posture looked relaxed anymore. The man sitting on the floor with Malik disappeared. The Mafia boss returned. Leila felt a chill. What happened? His eyes remained fixed outside. Stay inside tonight. Her heartbeat quickened. What? Lock the doors. The tone in his voice frightened her. Why? But he was already moving. Heading for the exit. Malik stood. Dad. Hyun-Woo stopped. Just for a second. Then he looked back. The hardness in his eyes softened. Be good for your mother. And then he left. The apartment suddenly felt colder. Leila moved toward the window. She watched him step outside. Several men approached him. A tense conversation followed. One of them handed him photographs. Even from a distance, she could see something was wrong. Very wrong. The next day, curiosity got the better of her. And curiosity became a mistake. She searched his name. Cha Hyun-Woo. The first result seemed harmless. Businessman. Investor. Corporate executive. But deeper searches revealed rumors. Articles. Investigations. Stories people whispered but never proved. Crime. Violence. The underworld. Her hands began shaking. No. She continued reading. The more she learned, the worse it became. By the time she finished, her face had gone pale. That evening, when Hyun-Woo arrived to see Malik, Leila met him outside. Alone. The moment he saw her expression, he understood. You know, it wasn't a question. Leila stared at him. You lied. I never lied. You let everyone believe. I never said I was someone else. Her anger exploded. You're connected to criminals. His face remained calm. Too calm. Yes. The honesty shocked her. No excuses. No denial. Nothing. Just the truth. Leila felt sick. My son is around you. I know. You could bring danger into our lives. For the first time, something flashed across his face. Pain. Only for a moment. Then it disappeared. I would never let anything happen to him. You can't promise that. Silence. Because she was right. Neither spoke for several seconds. Then Leila made her decision. The hardest one she had made in years. You need to stay away from us. The words hurt more than she expected. Apparently, they hurt him too. Because for the first time since she'd met him, he looked genuinely affected. His jaw tightened. His eyes lowered briefly. Then he nodded. If that's what you want. She swallowed. Yes. Another lie. A painful one. But necessary. At least that's what she told herself. Hyun-Woo looked toward the apartment. Toward the window where Malik often waited. Then he turned away. And walked toward his car. Without another word. That night, Malik waited by the window. And waited. And waited. But Hyun-Woo never came. The next day was worse. And the day after that. Eventually, Malik asked the question. Did I do something wrong? Leila nearly cried. No. Then why doesn't he visit anymore? She couldn't answer. Because she didn't know how to explain adult problems to a child. Especially not this child. Especially not now. Across the city, Hyun-Woo buried himself in work. Meetings. Deals. Problems. Threats. Anything to keep busy. Nothing worked. Every room felt empty. Every day felt longer. One evening, he opened a drawer in his office. The drawing was still there. 3 stick figures. Mom. Dad. Malik. His chest tightened. A knock interrupted his thoughts. One of his associates entered. We found them. Hyun-Woo looked up instantly. The men watching Leila. The room grew cold. What did they want? The associate hesitated. Then he answered. They were working for the rival organization. Hyun-Woo stood immediately. Danger radiated from him. How long? Several weeks. Several weeks. His expression darkened. Because that meant one thing. The danger had never disappeared. It had only been waiting. At that exact moment, another scene was unfolding elsewhere. Malik was walking home from a small convenience store near the apartment. He carried a bag of snacks. The trip should have taken 5 minutes. He never made it home. A dark van stopped beside the sidewalk. The door opened. A hand grabbed him. The bag hit the ground. Snacks scattered across the pavement. The van disappeared into traffic. By the time witnesses reacted, it was already gone. 20 minutes later, Leila received a phone call. The moment she answered, her world collapsed. Mom. Malik's terrified voice filled the line. Tears streamed down her face instantly. Malik. The call was taken away. Then another voice spoke. Cold. Dangerous. If you want to see him again. Leila couldn't breathe. Please. Tell Cha Hyun-Woo we're ready to negotiate. The call ended. Leila dropped to her knees. The phone slipped from her hand. Her son was gone. Her baby was gone. And suddenly she realized the truth. She had been afraid of Hyun-Woo's world. But now that world was the only thing that could save Malik. With trembling hands, she dialed a number. The number she had promised herself never to call again. The phone rang once. Twice. Then Hyun-Woo answered. The moment he heard her crying, his voice changed. What happened? Leila broke completely. They took him. Silence. A terrifying silence. Then, who? Malik. The room around Hyun-Woo seemed to freeze. Every person nearby immediately sensed danger. Because they had never heard that tone before. Never. Where is he? I don't know. Hyun-Woo closed his eyes. Just once. When they opened again, the man Leila had come to know was gone. The father figure was gone. The businessman was gone. Only the Mafia boss remained. And he sounded absolutely lethal. Listen to me carefully. Leila struggled to breathe. I'm listening. Hyun-Woo's voice became ice. They made the biggest mistake of their lives. And somewhere in Seoul, a group of kidnappers had no idea that they had just declared war on the most dangerous man in Korea. They made the biggest mistake of their lives. The call ended. Leila sat frozen on the floor. Her entire body trembled. She had never felt so helpless. Every second felt like an hour. Every thought ended with the same terrifying question. What if she never saw Malik again? Across the city, Cha Hyun-Woo was already moving. His office doors burst open. Men stood immediately. Nobody spoke. Nobody dared. One look at his face was enough. Something serious had happened. Very serious. Hyun-Woo walked straight toward the conference room. Everyone inside. Within seconds, the room filled. Senior associates. Security chiefs. Trusted lieutenants. The most dangerous men in his organization. Hyun-Woo dropped several photographs onto the table. The images of Leila. The images of Malik. The images of the men who had been watching them. His voice remained calm, which somehow made it even scarier. They took him. The room became silent. One man swallowed. Boss. Hyun-Woo looked at him. The man immediately lowered his eyes. Nobody wanted to be the person speaking when Hyun-Woo looked like this. I want every warehouse searched. Yes, boss. Every safe house. Yes, boss. Every vehicle. Understood. Hyun-Woo leaned forward. If anyone involved leaves Seoul before I find them. His voice dropped lower. They won't enjoy what happens next. Nobody doubted him. Not for a second. Because this wasn't business anymore. This was personal. Very personal. Hours passed. Leila sat inside her apartment, unable to think. Unable to eat. Unable to breathe properly. Then a knock came at the door. She rushed toward it. Hyun-Woo stood outside. His suit jacket was gone. His sleeves were rolled up. Dark circles had appeared beneath his eyes. Yet somehow he looked more focused than ever. Leila immediately grabbed him. Find him. Her voice broke. Please. Hyun-Woo looked directly into her eyes. I will. The certainty in his voice almost made her cry again. You don't understand. I do. No. Tears streamed down her face. He's all I have. For several seconds, Hyun-Woo said nothing. Then he quietly answered. He's all I have too. Leila froze. The truth in those words hit her harder than anything else. Because she finally understood. This wasn't pretend anymore. Not for Malik. Not for Hyun-Woo. And maybe not for her either. 3 hours later, the first lead arrived. One of Hyun-Woo's men entered a warehouse. Breathing heavily. We found them. Every person in the room stood. Location. The man gave an address. Hyun-Woo immediately started walking. Prepare the vehicles. Within minutes, a convoy of black SUVs sped through Seoul. Nobody spoke. Nobody joked. The atmosphere inside the vehicles felt deadly. Because everyone knew what was at stake. Meanwhile, Malik sat alone inside a warehouse. His hands weren't tied. His kidnappers didn't think they needed to. After all, he was only 6. The little boy hugged his knees. Trying not to cry. Trying to be brave. Just like his mother taught him. One of the kidnappers walked past. Malik looked up. Can I go home now? The man laughed. No. My mom will be worried. Not my problem. Malik lowered his head. Then he quietly whispered. Dad will find me. The kidnapper rolled his eyes. Sure he will. But Malik believed it. Completely. Because every time something bad happened, Hyun-Woo showed up. Bullies. Problems. Fear. He always came. And this time would be no different. Outside the warehouse, tires screeched. SUV doors opened. Armed men stepped out. At the center stood Cha Hyun-Woo. One of his associates approached. Boss. Hyun-Woo never took his eyes off the building. How many? At least 15. Normally, that would have required careful planning. Tonight, Hyun-Woo wasn't interested in planning. He was interested in getting Malik back. Move. The operation began. Inside the warehouse, several guards suddenly heard shouting. Then footsteps. Then panic. One man reached for his weapon. Too late. The door exploded inward. Chaos erupted. Men ran. Tables overturned. Orders were shouted. But Hyun-Woo's people were already everywhere. The kidnappers quickly realized the truth. They weren't defending a warehouse. They were surviving an avalanche. Within minutes, the situation collapsed. The rival organization never stood a chance. Hyun-Woo moved through the building. Room after room. Searching. Ignoring everything else. Then he heard a voice. A familiar voice. Dad. Everything stopped. Hyun-Woo turned. A small room stood partially open. Inside sat Malik. The little boy immediately jumped to his feet. Dad. And for the first time that night, Hyun-Woo finally breathed. The child was safe. The child was alive. Nothing else mattered. Malik buried his face against his chest. I knew you'd come. The words nearly destroyed him. Because Malik had never doubted him. Not once. Not even when everyone else did. Hyun-Woo tightened his hold. I'm sorry. The little boy looked confused. For what? For being late. Malik smiled. You came. That was enough for him. Outside, dawn was beginning to break. Several hours later, a car stopped outside Leila's apartment. The door opened. And Malik jumped out. Mom. Leila ran. The distance disappeared instantly. She dropped to her knees and wrapped him in her arms. Tears flowed freely. Malik cried too. Neither wanted to let go. Behind them, Hyun-Woo watched quietly. Relief flooded through him. A feeling he wasn't used to. Leila eventually stood. Her eyes met his. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. The gratitude. The fear. The love. Everything was there. Finally, she walked toward him. Then surprised both of them. She hugged him. Tightly. For several seconds, neither moved. Then Hyun-Woo slowly returned the embrace. Malik immediately smiled. The biggest smile of his life. Weeks passed. Life slowly returned to normal. The kidnappers disappeared from the picture. The threats faded. The danger retreated. For the first time in a long time, peace arrived. One afternoon, Malik sat at the dining table drawing. Hyun-Woo walked past. The little boy grinned. Come here. What is it? I made something. Hyun-Woo looked down. Another drawing. 3 figures. Just like before. But this time something was different. There were no labels. No explanations. No need. Because everyone already knew who they were. Hyun-Woo. Leila. Malik. A family. Real. Not fake. Not temporary. Real. Several months later, Hyun-Woo stood in a small park watching Malik play football. Leila stood beside him. The afternoon sun painted everything gold. For once, nobody was chasing him. Nobody was threatening him. Nobody feared him. He liked that feeling. More than he expected. Leila glanced at him. What are you thinking? Hyun-Woo smiled slightly. That he changed everything. She followed his gaze. Toward Malik. Their miracle. Their chaos. Their happiness. The little boy suddenly ran back toward them. Breathing hard. Excited. Without hesitation, he grabbed both of their hands. Then he smiled. The same smile that had started everything. The same smile that had changed 3 lives. Dad. Hyun-Woo looked down. Yes. Malik squeezed his hand. I love you. For a brief moment, emotion overwhelmed him. The feared Mafia boss. The man criminals feared. The man enemies avoided. The man who once believed he would always be alone. He squeezed Malik's hand back. I love you too. And this time, nobody had to pretend. The end. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more emotional Afro-Korean stories filled with love, family, sacrifice, and unforgettable twists. And before you go, tell us in the comments, what was your favorite moment in Malik and Hyun-Woo's journey? Was it the first time Malik called him Dad? The sports festival? Or the rescue that proved just how much Malik meant to him? Your comment helps shape future stories, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. Until the next story, take care, and thank you for watching.